Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today took his love of brunch and storytelling, along with his TV production background, to turn his side hustle into a food and lifestyle brand named Brunch Boys. Let's have him tell you a little bit about it. Why? Please welcome the president of Brunch Boys, Jeremy Jacobowitz. What's going on, man?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having brunch with me, or I guess lunch with me. My first question always is, what's your go-to sandwich lunch? In your case, or brunch, I'll go with for you.
We'll go with lunch just because ends up eating that a lot more than brunch.
Yeah.
It's honestly just like a tuna sandwich. Like I really like. I guess like if you know my social media, like a lot of the videos are more like extravagant things and bigger things, but like that's clearly not the way anyone's able to eat.
Correct.
So truly, most days, day to day, eat very very simply. So like, yeah, today I had like a salad with some grilled chicken on it. But if I was gonna do like a sandwich, just like tuna sandwich, good tuna, it's just some good bread. Keep it simple. I love it.
That's actually what I had for lunch today. So works out very well. So as I stated in my intro, you have a background in TV. You did you obviously worked in as a PA, did various other roles. Can you tell folks a little bit about how you got started with the idea of creating Brunch Boys in like 2014?
Sure. Yeah. God, was it that long ago? I like get time confused a lot.
It kind of blends in after a while.
And I don't even know what year it is now. So, I don't know. But yeah. So I started working in TV when I was 19. I was a student at NYU, and they pushed very big to, work while you can, intern while you can, since you're in the city, take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So two things: I sold TVs at Circuit City, which didn't really translate a lot over, but then I also started interning at SNY, which is the Mets network here in New York. So I did everything from corporate to be in the field to production, everything there. I spent about a year or two there. God, yeah. Started working for WCBS here in New York while I was still in college. I was field producing. I got laid off before I graduated, which is an accompliment. And then I worked at WWE for a year. And at that point, like I knew I'd wanted to work in sports and TV. I studied sports management and kind of thought that was a path. But this is now, say it was 2030. This is well over a decade ago, a dozen years ago. And the project at WWE ended, and there just weren't that many places to work. To work in sports TV, your goal really should be to work at ESPN, and that was not my goal. I honestly didn't want to work there. It's in the middle of Connecticut. Now they have studios a lot more all over the place, but at the time, if you worked at ESPN, you had to be in Bristol. And I just wasn't in love with the corporate culture. It was just very corporate, which is not really me. So I was like, okay, well, I love TV. What else could I do with this? And I went back to the beginning, I started PAing again, and ended up on food shows. So Food Network shows, Travel Channel, all that kind of stuff, food competition. And I very quickly met Bobby Flay, and then was his PA. So basically his assistant on set. So working with Bobby, you really get like a lesson on food TV. He's the god of food TV. He's not only the star, he's the producer and executive producer, and really has been there from the beginning. So then I started producing. So I was producing food competition, food travel, cooking shows, all that fun stuff. Still always freelance, always various networks. And when I started Brunch Boys, there was never a thought to like, oh, I'm going to be an influencer, I'm going to do this full time, I'm going to be a creator. Like that world didn't exist that many years ago. So I was not smart enough to foresee that. I was just like, oh, I'm always just someone that I'm bored. I don't ever want to sit around not doing anything. And when you're in TV, you have time off between gigs. So it's like, I'll have this little thing, I'll make some videos between gigs, blah, 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 blah. And I started the social media around this video series. And this is right around the time when food accounts were taking off on Instagram, and mine just took off. And still there's no thought to doing it full time because no one made money. But I started concentrating on a little more. I need to take a little bit of a break from TV. I'm like, all right, this seems fun. So, this account's bubbling a little bit, and people started making money. And then I started making money, and still, I didn't think it'd be full time, but very quickly I started making more money than I did in TV. And it really made the math simple. It's like, okay, I still have to do what I love doing, which is like being in these kitchens and telling me stories and making these videos. But, as opposed to doing it for Food Network, I'm going to be doing it for myself and having full creative control and making more money. And I don't know if the lifestyle is easier. I don't know if the work is necessarily easier, but it's certainly working for yourself is much nicer than, having to be on set for 16 hours a day or whatever.
No, I totally get that. What I some of the parts of your story that I find very interesting, and it is one, you were like way ahead of the game, in the sense of a few things. One, like the fact that and in my researches and like, and just been following you for so long, like you actually had suggested to folks in Food Network and stuff like that, like, hey, we should do something for brunch and things like that. And the fact that you like, so the fact that you actually were like had the foresight to think that way, I think to me is just awesome. The fact that like a year into it, and then even the thought process, I thought of the fact that you went with calling it Brunch Boys, instead of just like Brunch Guy or Brunch Boy, because of the fact that, it's kind of like made sense. So you were like ahead of the game in the brunch world, and then also ahead of the game when it came to all that aspect of it. And then like even pitching it, I think to me, that was one of the things that I found to be so interesting, that you kind of, you tapped a market and saw something, and it's almost kind of how you've always been evolving basically through your channel, and how you've kind of created your brand. You just kind of always taking the next step when it comes to that. And so I'm really intrigued by kind of how you kind of did that morph, of basically going from Brunch Boys, because that's kind of how it went, and then now, and that's originally how your Instagram was, to now it's Jeremy Jacobowitz Brunch Boys, but it's mostly like you went from like basically brand to personality to like your own personal brand. And I'm selfishly, I'm asking, and I figure some other people may want to do it. Like I'm Deli Fresh Threads is my clothing brand, and everyone knows me as the sandwich guy, but I'm always kind of intrigued by the aspect of how does someone transition from that aspect of the brand to being actually the personality and going that route.
Yeah. I mean, I think the answer to all of that, even going back to the beginning of like brunch and all that and how I got started, I think it's my approach of that. I'm never going to be the best at something. You just aren't. If you really think you're the best at something, like you better be fucking like Michael Jordan, like, because you're just not. So my approach to everything is like, if I'm not going to be the best, like obviously try to be as good as you can be and whatever, but it's better to be different and to stand out somehow. So that was always it with brunch. Is like, okay, well, if everyone else is doing this, I'll do this. Well, if everyone's still doing photos and Instagram has launched videos, maybe I'll do videos. Maybe I'll do this, but whatever. And that sort of goes and then ties back to sort of the transition away from like this idea of like Brunch Boys as this bigger whole thing to me. And that was again like, okay, if it was two things. It was when people started paying me money, I thought to myself, like, okay, well, who can pay me? At the time, the account was very much kind of just food. Like, you really didn't see me or hear from me. Like, there are no stories for me to talk to every day. There weren't any videos. So it's like, whatever my little captions were, you would hear from me and you would just sort of see photos of food. And even then, people started paying me just because I had a bunch of followers. But I realized, like, okay, if I'm just posting photos of cheeseburgers, like, what brands can I work with? Because I don't charge restaurants. So it's like, am I only sitting there waiting around for the McDonald's of the world to come to me?
Yeah.
Or how do I open this up where I could work with everybody? And I realized very quickly, like, oh, if it's me in the photo and the videos, well, then I could work with anybody because it's just my perspective and my voice. And yeah, I'm always going to be sort of focused on food, but you could tie food into anything. I could wear this hat and be eating a cheeseburger and talk about the hat in the post. Like it all ties together. So that was very much a huge part of that of like, okay, like this makes sense. This is me. And then it was still a few more years when I started branding away from the Brunch Boys name to my own name. And I was again seeing the shifts in social media of like, okay, now there's like a whole ton of more food accounts. There's a whole lot. Everyone is something. Everyone's a New York foodie. Everyone's a brunch this, everyone, whatever. It's like, all right, I need to keep differentiating myself from this and make it even clear that like, I think what happened too is like the way you used to grow on Instagram, social media, it just felt a lot more organic, where it's just like, oh, they kind of see who you are. Maybe they read about you because you're in something. Oh, who's this person? That's kind of cool. Now, really, the only way to grow is to make like viral content, which I don't really do. It's nice when stuff goes viral. It's not really my intention. But two, what happens is when stuff goes viral, people are following you, not really even knowing who you are. It takes forever for them to even figure out what account they followed. So I was just like, oh, I'm putting myself on a hold because people are seeing this video that is crushing. They see in the name Brunch Boys and they're going to expect that to be the next video. I'm never going to give them a video that's Brunch Boys because it's just me and it's not really brunch food, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, everything can be brunch food, but it's not really tailored that direction. So I just kind of, I felt that with every new follower I was gaining, and I wasn't even giving them what their expectation was. So now I'm like, okay, let's say they find me because of some video that's going viral. But when they click follow, they're clicking knowing, hey, this account is called Jeremy Jacobowitz, and there's his face right there, and there's him. Oh, okay. Next time the video comes up, it's not necessarily some viral brunch video, but it's me. And like, oh, I followed him for his food recommendations. Here's another food recommendation. Cool. So it just felt like that sort of like honing in on, okay, it's becoming so much more and more personal. It's becoming so much harder to stand out. Anybody else could make a brunch account about boys. I see them. There's a million of them. There's Brunch Boys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No one else is going to make an account called Jeremy Jacobowitz. Maybe they will, but even if they do, that's not me. So yeah. It became a reason like, okay, how am I, this is going to make me stand out. This is truly a better connection to my brands at this point than Brunch Boys. Even though it's still a great name, it's still the name of my company. I still like, it's a great alliteration. Everyone, especially when I'm in articles, people love referencing it, which is totally fine. It's not like anything I'm not proud of or whatever, but I did think it made more sense to focus on my name.
And what I found interesting as well was that in from doing some of the research is the fact that originally, even though it was obviously Brunch Boys and it was just mostly you, even when you had other people involved, it always ended up being back to you. So like obviously the brand has always been you. So it just makes sense to go that route. You also have so many other layers and other things to talk about, like everything from like your weight loss to just like life, dating, all these different aspects of it. So it's kind of an interesting thing to be able to see. But at the same time, obviously everyone, at least for me, that's how I got drawn to you, was the food. You do phenomenal, and obviously your PA work and being on TV and working on food. I kind of wanted to, I had seen some of your suggestions and some of your tips, and I kind of wanted to see if maybe you can kind of share some stuff. And I know that you edit things in a way that's like very similar to you, like how your own style of editing, but some of the things that I get drawn to, or that I caught my attention that I wanted to share and see if you can give other tips, was you'd always talked about obviously use natural lighting as much as possible. Food. What a favorite of mine that you've said is food, make sure that it's vertical. So when you're doing it on Instagram, that it's vertical. And then at the same time, also the fact that you love doing a lot of like 1 minute videos, but the first 4 seconds are the most important to kind of grab. I've done a lot of research, Jeremy. I'm a big fan. So, but I absolutely love it because you do a really good job with like everything. You have so many different styles or so many different segments. So I guess my first question when it comes to all that, with all the tips that you gave, are there any other tips that you recommend to someone that's kind of, and obviously everyone wants to go viral and everyone wants to blow up, but anything that you can think of in the consistency of what to do that always is great tips to be able to follow if you're going to be doing stuff on social?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really like finding your voice, and whether that's literally your voice or what your angle is or the way you shoot or where you edit, blah 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 blah. And I think it takes time to find like what truly speaks to you and what isn't you. And I think like TikTok has brought a whole new wave of lessons, I guess. And I think like one of the things on TikTok you have to remember is that for the most part, the views are coming from people that don't follow you. So I think it's even more critical. And you see this with the people that are super successful on TikTok, and now sort of like that has trickled out to other platforms, is that you kind of have to rinse and repeat your content. It kind of like, if you see the people that are successful on TikTok, they literally do the same exact videos over and over and over again. And I try to, and it's harder for me to do that because I'm in different restaurants, I'm in different lighting, I'm eating food generally, but all kind of looks different. I couldn't like keep the consistency of like me being in a studio or me doing this or me just making the same joke or whatever. So I try and keep it consistent as possible, where if you're scrolling and even if you don't follow me, you've probably seen one of my videos at some point. So it's beyond just catching their eye of what that video is about. It's catching, it's like, oh, this is a Jeremy video without them even realizing it. So I have the same exact opener for every single video, the same beats, the same pacing, the same everything, the same format, to try and give them the same video over and over and over again. Well, obviously the meat of it is different, but the surface level is the same. I think like that's really key, of just like connecting, and let them know what it is. Cause they're not watching for more than half a second before they decide to keep swiping on. So if you could give them the same thing where they remember like, oh, it's a Jeremy video. Cause you don't even see what the name is when you're scrolling TikTok. You're scrolling so quickly. So just grab them like, oh, okay, the same text, the same this, the same beats, over and over and over and over them, condition them to know what your video is.
That's a great advice, to be the consistency part of it. I never thought of it that way. I'd never thought of it going that way as well as repeating, because sometimes I feel like I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. And
Oh, I
that's
feel
kind
that,
of,
and I don't really want to do that either. But
no.
there's the thing that I've learned is like, there has to be a balance to like your creativity and like you're doing stuff to get likes and views and followers. Like I wish I could just be like, I don't care, I just want to do what I feel like, but like it's my job, so I can't.
Yeah.
So it's just when I don't know, if I really feel like getting a piece of content out there, like I make up, like I have a second YouTube channel, don't even talk about it, just like stuff I feel like, oh, this is really interesting to me, I want to make a video about it. At that point I don't really care who watches it, I just want to make that video.
Yeah.
Great, I have places for that to go. I make all my money from TikTok and Instagram, so I kind of have to play the game a little bit if I can't just put up whatever I want. So
No.
there has to be a balance to it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I can't just always do what I want, because I would make very different videos if that was the
No,
case.
I get it. But and a lot of videos, like, you do a great job with like everything from like, hey, these are the best places to eat, this in New York City, this is the best places to eat when you go to Chicago or New York or Connecticut, and places like that. So that always kind of helps with it. But yeah, that's really interesting. So I know you've mentioned a lot about sponsorships and stuff like that. Can you provide some tips on like how that kind of, or advice for creators when how they're trying to pursue that? Is that something that they come to you, like sponsors are coming to you, or are you, because I've read something that you mentioned about like always kind of spinning obviously the positive in the, because at the time, I guess in the beginning you were kind of doing you were being like, hey, I was like, I'm the top like brunch on Instagram or something like that, and you had mentioned something like that, and I thought that was kind of interesting, of kind of sometimes being able to spin the positives of you. But at the same time, are you approaching these sponsors, or at least in the beginning? I'm assuming now they're coming to you probably more often than you're going to them. But in the beginning, is it something that, like, what advice would you give someone to kind of do that if they were thinking of going to talk to a brand or something for sponsorship?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they come to me, but that comes from, like you said, sort of like years of meeting people. And my advice for that is to not pitch ideas for them, but pitch yourself to them. Like, I don't think it's any harm in finding who works at some company you want to work with and emailing them, be like, hey, just want to get on your radar. Here's my little press kit. Would love to get coffee sometime or whatever. I think like pitching yourself works, because what I learned very quickly was like, these people don't just have like funds to give you, like they come up with ideas and then they go looking for influencers. So for you to take the time to pitch them this amazing idea of something exactly you want to do, they're like, well, cool, but like we don't have money for that, what do you want us to do about this? Where at the other, where what I do is like pitch myself, hey, let's meet. I go to as many events as I can and network as much as I can. And then we meet these people, and then knowing that, okay, the next time they do have something, maybe they'll come to me because I'm more top of mind. Or even like I said, I don't want to devalue what we do, but like that's part of it. It's like, hey, maybe they have something, I've never worked with them before, they want to send me product. I think it's very easy to be like, oh, hey, well, you got to pay me for that. Or rather I'd be like, well, do you want anything? Like, do you guys expect anything from this? And like, no, we just want you to try the product. Okay, cool. They send it to me. I put up one story that it came. I mean, I want to try stuff anyway before I'd even want to do a
Yeah.
deal. So they say like, okay, cool. Well, we met Jeremy. We like him. He did us a little favor by putting up a story for something. Okay, cool. Now we have a budget for something. Or they left that job and went to another job, but they remember working to me. Like, I think that's the game more than anything, is just
The
meeting people and
networking.
talking to people and
Yeah.
networking. Yeah, more than anything else.
What I noticed that, and obviously what we were talking about, the when we were going back to the whole idea of the TikToks and doing all those things, is that one of the main reasons why, obviously, so some level of creativity, everything from like doing like the, hey, these are my top five, or doing the bodega, egg, everything egg and cheese, or type of thing. Is that kind of just little things that basically, because I noticed that it's very catching to me, because I always like, ooh, top five, or ooh, top three. That one always catches my eye when I see that. Is that something that you just kind of are like always? And then I guess the other aspect of it is, when you go to a city, because you've been traveling a lot, you travel quite a bit, where are you getting your I guess your inspirations of where to go? I mean, are you people refer, Yelp, where how are you kind of working that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the top lists, like probably wouldn't be my favorite thing to do because it's all these videos that I could put out separately that I have to put together. But at the end of the day, sort of going back to like what works and what you want to do, like I just saw that those videos work and it makes sense. Like anything you could tease like that, like retention in videos on any platform is huge. So the fact that you could say one, hey, here's the top 5, whatever, people want to see what all those are. And then also they love fighting with you about it. So it just adds comments, everything. Cause every time I post the top thing, I always, the whatever the comments always like, oh, like, well, what did I miss? And it just like eggs them on, be like, oh man, you missed this. It's like, okay, like, cool. Like, yeah, let me know. Like next time I come in.
Yeah.
And that sort of does go back to like, honestly, the way I do that is just, I do go on stories and Instagram, like, hey, I'm coming to LA. I want to do a best breakfast burrito video. What are your guys' favorites? I start there, honestly. I read sort of the bigger food media publications. So Eater, Infatuation, whatever, LA Times when I was in LA. And then sort of ask my friends that way and sort of compile that way. That's why it's funny when people yell at me about these lists, like, how could you include all these places? I'm like, I don't know. I looked at every one of like the mainstream sources in your city, and these are the places that they told me. So if you have a problem with it, I don't know. Like you guys got to do a better job in that city of promoting these places because I can't. That's the only way I'm going to find them.
What would you say is a misconception about, because obviously, and I know no people don't want to like using the word influencer and stuff like that, but being what you do, the content that you create, what's something that you think is something that people don't understand? Because I mean, I know that you're constantly working. It's like it's not like you're constantly on and constantly either editing, doing something. And I think people don't realize those things, but is there like, what is something else that people may not understand about kind of doing what you're doing, creating content all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just it. Like, your life is your content. So there's no really turning off. If you turn it off, you're not doing your job. So I think like there's no separation. It's just like some people like that works for me. I'm fine with that. Like it's not hard necessarily. Just say one of the things you have to deal with if your job. I think there are people that would much rather have a job that's 9 to 5 and on the weekends you don't get to think about it. That's wonderful and that's great for you. But I think you don't understand. Like I constantly get, DMs and messages to me as well. I'd be like, oh, like I would love to quit my job because I hate it and do exactly what you do. And maybe that's true, but I also tell them, it's like, well, you're just seeing, like, you see the best sides of it. So of course you think that, but like, maybe what you're doing right now isn't the best fit, but it doesn't mean you have to like give up everything and start over. Maybe just find another job. I don't like, you see, like there's all these articles too about like creator burnout and this burnout. And I've been doing this much longer than most people. And I've never felt creator burnout because I truly think like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think the best thing I always tell people is like, find the time to do stuff like this. Like find the time to to be creative and have a creative outlet if you're like feeling like your job isn't fulfilling, but don't necessarily just quit your 9 to 5 job with all your benefits and blah, blah, blah. Like I also never had that. I've never had a full-time job. I've always been freelance. So this transition wasn't very difficult because I've never known where money's going to come from. I've never had insurance for my company. I've never had benefits. I have a 401k now through my own company for the first time. It's just a totally different lifestyle. And I don't think it's for everybody. And I don't recommend it for everybody.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I actually have I have a 9 to 5 job. Well, I guess it's not really, it's like I work a 410. I have a corporate job and then I do my
right. I say 9 to 5. No one's job is 9 to 5.
No
anymore,
one's 9 to 5 anymore. Yeah, but yeah, I know what you mean. No, I totally know what you mean. And that's always kind of the big thing. And I that's why whenever people start talking like that, I'm like, well, you can always keep creating. And then as you create, as you grow, kind of in your situation, in a year, you kind of outgrew where you were going and you're like, hey, I'm seeing the results. I'm going to take that leap. And then you just kind of kept
have
building
a plan.
From there.
Have a plan to build and have a money plan. Like I was basically what I did when I decided to like, okay, let's actually make a go at this. I literally looked at my bank account. I'm like, okay, like how long can I actually go before I have to go back to TV? Like just paying rent. I cut out every single expense I had pretty much. And it's like, okay, I could pay rent for a few months and like be okay before I have to go get a job. And that was the decision I made, but I didn't make that decision without knowing that. So I think like game plan, really think about it, have a million backup plans, have this. Like even now, every day I wake up, I'm like, this could be over tomorrow. What's my plan? What's next? And I think like, as long as your strategy is there and you think about it, sure, of course, do whatever you want. But I think this idea that like, oh, I'll just quit my job and everything be perfect. It's like, no, please, that's the worst idea. Please don't do that.
No, I totally agree with that. No, that makes total sense. So a few things I'm kind of curious of. One, I know when you worked for WWE, you were a logger. And do you have a favorite wrestler? Who's your favorite wrestler?
Well, my favorite wrestler is Triple H. So now I get to see him officially take over WWE and enjoy his products, which I love.
Okay. And then I know at one point you and one of your coworkers had a podcast doing that. And I know you also did a podcast for people that you wanted to talk to. So like, I love the fact that you found you even just mentioned that the fact that you have like a YouTube channel, the fact that you kind of find kind of in many ways, that's kind of like your form of recreation of like, kind of something fun for you to do, even though you're creating content. Cause I think sometimes we kind of blend sometimes where like that fun aspect and responsibility kind of like our jobs get merged together. So it's kind of fun to be able to see that you have these different creative outlets.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm all over the place. I literally just try, especially for those kind of things where I know I'm not making money. It really takes a lot of motivation to do it. So I don't force it, which is sort of why both podcasts went away. Just like I was really into both podcasts when like it was legit COVID stuff and I wasn't leaving the apartment. So I'm like, okay, like what's content I could create that I could do sitting right here at my desk? And that became like podcast was a very easy format to do that with. And as soon as sort of the world opened back up, especially because I was able to travel, the time that I put into traveling and that kind of content sort of took away time I could do for the other projects, which it's still there. Still float around ideas. If I'm motivated again, I'll do it again and whatever. But yeah, that's always my thing. Again, sort of having that balance of like let me work on things I just want to work on and let me work on things that I know I have to do.
So one thing that you've always brought up doing so much with food, you've always talked about how you don't like, no one gives you food. Like you buy your food and do all that. Yeah. Has there been certain incidences or, and obviously there's good opportunities when you obviously, build relationship with chefs and stuff like that, and maybe go out on your own and do stuff like that. But have there been incidences or things that, let's say a restaurant, when they like reach out to you, that just are kind of like just pure like turnoffs, or like pure like, why don't do these things when trying to approach creators and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I do want to clarify. So basically, like if you see me in the kitchen in a video, like clearly that food's comped because like correct. I wouldn't pay for that. Yeah. What I always say is I turn down comp meals just because if I'm going to a true meal, like I'd rather like kind of enjoy it. Like, yes, I'm probably there making videos anyway, but I don't want the pressure of that. And I'm sort of happy just supporting the restaurant. And sometimes they comment anyway and whatever, but at least I know there wasn't a trade and I try and do what I can. But in terms of like what turns me off, it honestly just, a lot of it is just like them clearly never seen my content and wanted me in. And I'm just like, cause they'll give me asks and like things. I'm like, I don't do that. Like, have you ever watched what am I like? Why do you even want me in if you don't even know who I am?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. It's like, it takes half a second to scroll my Instagram you go to my Instagram, you don't have to watch a full video. Just watch the first 10 seconds of 3 videos, 30 seconds. You'll get a clear understanding of what my content is. And, for you to be like, hey, come, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I don't want any of that. Just, whatever. I think that's the biggest turnoff.
Yeah. When you're filming, I'm always kind of intrigued because obviously I'm by myself most of the time. So do you have like a tripod for like, and do you just tripod set up your thing?
I was just filming in my kitchen. It's right here. It's on the tripod, a little camera.
That's awesome. Oh. Yeah. And so basically you just kind of set up with that and just kind of go from there. Right. And that's all you kind of, that's I
have lights. I have my lights. I got the audio. I got the whole setup, whatever. But yeah, that's really, I try and, especially when I'm traveling, like I have a giant light set up in my apartment. I don't even take that with me in the restaurants. It's too much. It breaks my back.
Yeah.
Try and like keep it light when I'm traveling.
No, makes sense now. And obviously I know you don't use you can use your cell phone, but you use your camera, just because obviously it provides better content and better everything, even though obviously cell phones do a pretty decent job.
Cell phones are great. It's more that like, I mean, I think it looks more beautiful, but it's different. Everyone has a different taste, but I just enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the editing. I enjoy the control of it. It's easier for me to do that honestly than shooting on my phone. I have a much easier time with my camera. So, and I love cameras. I'm very into cameras. So like, that's a huge part of why I like creating content.
Yeah, no, I get it. What advice would you give someone for I guess, advice that you've always followed, or advice that you would give someone wanting to start something?
I think just like you have to outwork everyone. I think like one of the biggest lessons I learned, like being Bobby Flay's PA, it's like, okay, well, like here's this dude that dropped out of high school when he was after a sophomore year or something. And now he's like literally a self-made millionaire, one of the most successful chefs ever. And being around him, it wasn't like him like sitting down and, you know, teaching me lessons. It was just observing what he does and seeing how someone that's successful operates. And like his whole thing was like, it doesn't matter who you are on set, like try and outwork me. Like he doesn't have to outwork everyone else, but he is. So like from every other position on that set, he expected that from you too. Like he wakes up at 6 and works out and then is on set all day between literally being on camera, taking meetings and doing this and doing that, and then going to the restaurant and cooking at night and then going to this, going that. Like he's in his 50s and has more energy than anybody else. It's like, okay, well, that's the kind of motivation it takes. He could also retire tomorrow. He doesn't have to keep working. He likes working and wants to continue doing this. Like those are the takeaways. So I was like, oh, like that's what it takes.
What motivates you then? What's like your
Oh, I mean, I also have a giant chip on my shoulder, so that helps too. I'll probably die early from that. But it is every day. It's like, okay, I wake up every, it's like, oh, how am I gonna be better? I'm a competitive person, but I'm not a competitive person in that, like, so I sucked at sports a lot too. It's like I'm not competitive in that someone has to lose for me to win. I just want to be better than them. So it's like when I look at other people's videos, I guess like, okay, well, how many likes did they get? How many views did they get? I don't want them to get 0 views. I want them to succeed too, but I want to do better than them. So it's like, okay, well, how do I do better than them? And that's sort of what I ask myself.
okay? I love it. Last question for you. Well, two questions. One, I think the last time I checked, you had like over 200 baseball caps. Are you past that number now, or
Yeah, I haven't counted in like a year and a half now. So I've tried to slow it down. This summer became like snapback summer. So my fitted is really the collection. I've tried to slow myself down to like 1 a month, maybe. So we're not too far past 200, but yes, definitely in that territory. Half my apartment is just baseball caps.
it's all, and is it only baseball, like baseball teams, minor league teams, or a little bit of everything?
It's majority MLB teams. I also just try and collect the caps from everywhere that I go. So if I go to a city that only has a minor league team, then I'll get that minor league cap. But other than that, I keep it to just the baseball MLB.
Okay, very cool. Where can people follow and watch you on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everywhere, Twitter, tweet with you? Where can they follow you?
Everywhere. Just type in either Jeremy Jacobowitz or Brunch Boys and it'll pop up somewhere.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. That's our show for today. Thank you so much to Jeremy Jacobowitz for being on and having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to check him out online. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. And if you want to check out my brand, Deli Fresh Threads, make sure to go online, check it out, spread it like PB&J, or if not, send me a sandwich selfie. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion.